Recently, U.S. Cyber Command has confirmed that it has acted against ransomware groups, underscoring the importance of cybersecurity to national security. I'm here with Cynthia Brumfield, author, CSO Online contributor, and analyst, to discuss why effective risk management techniques are often an important line of defense against cyber incidents. Stick around. Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Julia Beauchamp and I'm here, like I mentioned, with Cynthia Brumfield. She is an analyst, a CSO Online contributor, and also author of the new book, going to make sure I get this title right, Cybersecurity Risk Management, Mastering the Fundamentals Using the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Cynthia, thank you so much for calling in and chatting with us today.
Thank you, Julia, for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, like I mentioned in my little intro there, I really want to dive into how and why effective risk management techniques are often the ultimate defense against any sort of cyber incident, ransomware attack. You don't even have to be, a security pro to understand the consequence of a really large scale cyber incident. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of the Colonial Pipeline this year. That was obviously a very impactful ransomware attack. I mean, the pipeline was offline and for days.
It was. And I think what we're seeing are cyber incidents becoming much more impactful, much more dangerous, much more real world. You mentioned Colonial Pipeline. That was cyber, back in the day, cyber incidents involved, what today look like pranks, back, around the year 2000, around the year 2010, you had really funny little kind of cyber incidents that basically may have brought down portions of the internet from time to time, or may have caused some problems for organizations, and, they had to go back and reconnect and do all kinds of different things. But now you've got incidents that are real world impactful that could shut down a pipeline to the Eastern Seaboard.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that is relatively new. It's also enormously expensive. I mean, the Colonial Pipeline paid about $4.4 million in its ransomware attack. Now it got about $2.3 million of that back because the Justice Department, had a ninja move and retrieved it from the ransomware attackers before they themselves could make it disappear within the kind of the cryptocurrency world. But, it also cost them a fortune. And I was looking, I haven't seen any really good estimates on how much revenue they lost for those multiple days where the pipeline was not running. They had to bring in very expensive cybersecurity consultants that likely cost them millions of dollars to resolve this incident, and they were hit with class action lawsuits in the aftermath of it, not to mention the fact that a lot of the data of their employees were stolen, and that puts them at jeopardy. So there was just this mushrooming set of expenses that and damages that they experienced.
The risk is certainly there, and it's also certainly no secret that the risk is there. So how can an enterprise, an IT team, security pros within an organization even begin to wrap their arms around their understanding of the risk that's out there? And then coupled with that,
yes,
let's talk, even if you can just give a super brief explanation of what exactly the NIST framework is, because that's really what we're referencing here when we're talking about a risk management framework.
That's a good idea because we just sort of assume people know what this is. But the NIST cybersecurity framework was created as a result of an executive order under President Obama, who in 2013 ordered the National Institute of Standards and Technology to come up with a framework that better protects all organizations, but particularly critical infrastructure organizations against cyber incidents, and helps them resolve it and helps them, go back and take lessons learned. That does basically the whole thing. Over a course of a year, NIST, which is the standard setting body in the United States, and they have a tremendous expertise in all areas of cybersecurity, came up with this, very interesting and all-encompassing framework that does look at everything that organizations should be paying attention to and offers what outcomes that they should be reaching for, and gives them a tool set in the form of standards. They call them informative references, in the form of standards and other kind of informative references, so that you can go back to your organization and start implementing these practices. The difficulty with the NIST framework is that it was devised by scientists. I went to all 6 of the NIST workshops that led to the development of the framework, and they were held at universities across the country, and thousands of people attended. Most of them were, technically advanced thought leaders and academics and scientists and engineers. And they came up with this very, I think, elegant framework. It is a difficult framework to understand because NIST doesn't tell you how to do anything. It doesn't even really explain in detail what the steps are under each of the, 100-odd subcategory recommendations that are contained in the framework. Our book hopefully breaks it down into language that says, well, here's this section of the NIST framework. This is what that means.
Okay.
And this is what, best practices in the cybersecurity industry typically call for this particular thing. So it's a very elegant framework. It is well understood by professionals and academics and scientists. There is a translation gap between what NIST has produced and the mom and pop and small organizations in particular out there, in terms of how can we take this and apply it in our organization. And so hopefully our book does that.
And the NIST framework specifically, I know that you said that it was originally developed, by the federal government, and also specifically for critical infrastructure organizations. So that could be, for example, to continue talking about Colonial Pipeline. And that's sort of how this relates to the government underscoring the importance of cybersecurity as it relates to national security. But I would think, is it true that the NIST framework doesn't just have to be applied to the gas pipelines of the world? It can be probably applied to any organization, small to large. And I would think, and you can certainly correct me here, that this could be a good jumping off point for, say, a small business or a medium-sized business that maybe doesn't have a dedicated security pro on staff, to be able to look at this and say, okay, here are some actionable insights and some actionable steps we can take to better protect our enterprise, better protect our data, better protect whatever, reputation, for example.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The NIST framework became the critical infrastructure framework because that was the language in Obama's executive order, and that was, kind of the focus, that we need to protect the critical infrastructure more. But as NIST went through the development of the framework, and even now, they made very clear that they hope organizations who aren't critical infrastructure, and that's a very expansive term. I
Absolutely.
There's 17 or 18, they've changed them over the year, critical infrastructure sectors in the U.S. that could, be as expansive. I did some work in the broadcasting industry that could be as expansive as including a broadcast station. Now, is that critical infrastructure? Yes, it is, according to the federal government. That is critical infrastructure. So it's really hard to say that there's very few businesses out there that don't fit into a sector that has been designated, likely to be critical infrastructure. However, going back to your point, this really stresses that it needs to, that it encourages all organizations to take the framework and pick and choose from its many components those bits that might better help them secure their organizations. And it's sort of like a la carte menu. in some respects, nobody has to do everything. And if you're a small mom and pop and it doesn't make sense for you to do one particular aspect of the framework, well, look at the other parts. And if they help you, then, please adopt them in your organization. That's their posture.
So with the NIST framework, what about it is, and what about, risk management frameworks in general for cybersecurity, what about them specifically are important in defending against a cyber incident?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things the NIST framework seeks to do is to not produce a checklist of items that organizations should do, because in the past, having said that, I will give you a checklist, but in the past, what organizations, compliance does not equal security. That is kind of a well-worn phrase within the cybersecurity industry. But in the past, a lot of security efforts have been, okay, did that, checked off all those activities and we're done. And that has actually partially led to the security problems that we're facing today. It makes us less secure if you do that checklist model. But I will tell you, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is part of DHS, it's called CISA, has stressed since the beginning of the Biden administration and continues to stress certain base level activities that are really important to security. And, going back to I mentioned I may not have mentioned, but President Biden issued a very ambitious executive order on cybersecurity in May that mentions, for example, multi-factor authentication, appropriate detection and response activities, encryption, which basically enables you to keep data, kind of out of the hands of those who don't have the mathematical formulas that you're using to, store your data, and having an empowered security team. All those things are really important. But in addition to that, CISA, and I think I pulled this directly from their website, and Jen Easterly, who is the director of CISA currently, has mentioned them in various statements, keep backups of data. That is, for example, when it comes to ransomware, very critical, because if you have sufficient data backups and you test those backup systems and you keep them separate from the networks that are going to be infiltrated by ransomware attackers, then there's really this is a simplification, but it lessens the need to have to pay any ransom at all, because, okay, you got in our system and, you made everything non-functional. Well, fine, we'll just build everything again from backups. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, because these days ransomware attackers are also stealing data, and they're blackmailing organizations that they'll release it. But so it's not that simple. But if you keep backups, it will, keep the organization in good stead. Use a risk-based strategy to drive patch management programs. And this is really critical, because software is continually being patched every day, even as we speak, by the thousands of providers. We know the big ones. There's Microsoft, there's Adobe, there's Oracle, there's so many organizations out there that are kind of driving the business sector in terms of software, and they are, the monsters, but everybody else, can have flaws in their systems that they need to patch. And you can't just constantly go around doing that. You have to come up with sort of a risk-based management system for patching your systems. And that has led to a lot of major cybersecurity incidents over the years, having having inadequate patch management programs, testing your incident response plans, testing your security team's work, segmenting networks to limit the damage when an incident occurs, you want to protect the, you know, the most important parts of your network in a way that you may not want to, you know, protect something that's very relatively trivial that your organization has on its network. So having some sort of risk management program to segment your networks and treat different components that you perceive to be more valuable differently is really important. All of these things have been raised by CISA, have been raised by the Biden administration over the last 6 months, and have been stressed and have been emphasized. However, you know, there's far more than that really kind of goes into risk management.
Absolutely. Well, it really does seem like the NIST framework could be a good place to start for any either security pro or IT team member who is looking at their organization and saying, okay, we need to start investing in security in both, you know, literal dollars and also in time. And I think it could be good to be able to look at the NIST framework and say, like you have mentioned, XYZ applies to us, but we don't need to worry about ABC or vice versa. And I would think, too, that there is maybe a way that organizations can figure out how to build upon whatever existing infrastructure they already have. Would you think that's possible?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to start where you're at, and that's the existing infrastructure, right? And so you need to start building upon what you have. I mean, I think that goes without saying. And it is, you know, the legacy infrastructure is a really interesting question. And there's something called technical debt that, you know, kind of complicates the whole question of cybersecurity, which means you've got a lot of old stuff hanging around that you haven't really paid any attention to, or that hasn't been brought up to date, or hasn't maybe not even appear in the asset inventory, which is really common. So sure. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for calling in and joining me today. I think this was a really nice overview and definitely some actionable insights to take away from here if you, as even, you know, as someone in any level of the organization, looking at whatever your perhaps whatever your security infrastructure is and saying, you know, we need to improve this. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Cynthia.
You're welcome. Thank you, Juliet, for inviting me.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, you can give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any questions or comments about cybersecurity frameworks, risk management, what have you, please do leave us a comment in the comment section below. And if it's a question, I will do my best to get back to you. Just a reminder, this is our last episode of 2021. So happy holidays and happy new year to anyone watching. We will be with you again in 2022. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.